Do you know, my friend, that not all hobbies are innocent? Some are masks played out daily, not to bring joy but to feed a hidden hunger. When you watch closely, you will see that certain people, particularly the narcissist, are not spending their time in harmless pastimes, they are polishing the very mirror in which their ego must look divine. Today we speak about 8 weird hobbies that narcissists secretly enjoy every single day. They do not call them hobbies, of course. They call them habits, routines, even necessities. But underneath, these are practices that nourish their craving for control, admiration, and validation, turning conversations into competitions. For most people, conversation is connection. For the narcissist, it is a wrestling ring. Every word you speak is an opening for them to twist, one-up, or overshadow. Their hobby is not listening. It is measuring whether they appear smarter, sharper, or stronger than you. Collecting admirers like trophies. Just as a child might collect shells or stamps, the narcissist collects people. But these are not friendships. They are tokens of validation. Each admirer becomes proof to themselves that they are superior, and like a collector, they display them not for the admirer's sake but for their own reflection, staging their image with obsessive care. Some people wake up and live. A narcissist wakes up and curates. They design how they will be seen, what they wear, what they post, what they say. Every detail is rehearsed. It is a hobby, you can say, but one where the goal is not authenticity, only applause, eavesdropping for ammunition. Strange hobby, but very common. They listen not to understand but to collect secrets. Later, these secrets become weapons, small pieces of information used to manipulate, guilt, or dominate. What to others is idle gossip, to them is a treasure chest of control. Criticizing under the guise of advice. They will tell you, "I'm only trying to help." But in reality, their hobby is cutting you down piece by piece. The criticism is not for your growth but for their dominance. It is a daily ritual, remind you of your flaws so they can feel flawless. Stirring drama for amusement. A peaceful day is boring for a narcissist, so they stir the pot. They pit people against each other, spread half-truths, and then sit back to watch the fire burn. Drama is not disturbance to them, it is entertainment, reliving their own greatness. They replay their victories like an old record. Whether it was something small or grand, they will narrate it, exaggerate it, and relive it again and again. Their hobby is not growth but self-glorification, as if the past must be stretched endlessly to fill the emptiness of the present, turning kindness into currency. When they do something good, it is rarely free. A smile, a favor, a gift, these are not acts of generosity, but investments. Later, they will demand repayment. Kindness is not a flow, but a ledger, carefully maintained in their mind. So, my friend, what looks like innocent behavior may not always be what it seems. For the narcissist, these hobbies are a kind of worship of the self-image they cannot afford to let crack. The real question for you is this: will you participate in their theater, or will narcissists often hide their hunger for control under the cloak of everyday habits, so subtle that most people do not recognize them for what they truly are? When you observe closely, you will see that what looks like simple routines or natural preferences are in fact deliberate mechanisms that ensure they remain at the center of power. This is why so many individuals feel drained, confused, or diminished after spending time with a narcissist. The energy is not lost to coincidence. It is siphoned through invisible rituals that the narcissist has mastered, disguising them as ordinary parts of life. One way they do this is through conversations. At first glance, they seem to talk like anyone else, perhaps a little more passionately, a little more intensely, but nothing extraordinary. Yet beneath the surface, their engagement is not meant to connect, it is designed to steer. They shape the rhythm of dialogue so that the focus never strays too far from them. They interrupt, they redirect, they highlight their accomplishments, and when you try to speak, they either minimize it or quickly shift it back to themselves. What appears to be normal conversation is, in truth, a quiet assertion of dominance. They do not want to share the stage, they want to occupy it entirely. The same principle shows up in how they handle daily routines at home or work. They may insist on things being done their way, under the pretense of order, efficiency, or tradition. To an outsider, it may look like discipline or strong preference, but for the people closest to them, it becomes clear that these demands are not about order at all. They are about reinforcing control. The cup must be placed on this shelf, the work must be presented in that format, the schedule must follow their rhythm. Over time, these small demands build an environment where others unconsciously submit, simply to avoid friction. The narcissist then enjoys the satisfaction of control without ever having to raise their voice. Another layer of this disguised control is their obsession with appearance and image. At first, it may seem like someone who cares about grooming, fashion, or presentation. But for a narcissist, this daily ritual is less about self-care and more about constructing a persona that traps others into admiration. When they dress a certain way, post online in a calculated manner, or rehearse stories before sharing them, they are not just preparing, they are programming. They are creating a reality where others will perceive them exactly as they wish to be seen. The hobby of self-presentation is nothing less than a tool to keep others orbiting around their carefully built illusion. Even their acts of kindness often conceal control. A narcissist may offer help, buy gifts, or extend favors, but rarely are these acts free of expectation. To the recipient, it may feel generous in the moment, but later it becomes a lever. "Remember what I did for you," is their silent or spoken reminder, a way of keeping you indebted. What looks like generosity is a carefully crafted net that keeps people entangled. The daily practice of giving is not for the joy of giving. It is for ensuring that strings remain attached. Criticism is another habit dressed as care. They often frame it as advice, saying they only want the best for you. But the frequency and tone of their so-called feedback leave no doubt. It is designed to chip away at your confidence and keep you dependent on their approval. You begin to second-guess yourself, wondering if they are right, and in doing so, you unconsciously give them authority over your self-worth. They disguise their control as concern, making you feel that without their guidance you might falter. Drama, too, can be slipped into the rhythm of daily life in ways that seem almost casual. A narcissist can ignite tension with a single remark, then step back as though they were uninvolved. To outsiders, it may look like unfortunate conflict, but for them, it is sport. They master the art of stirring emotions just enough to keep the atmosphere unstable, ensuring that they remain the one steady point in the chaos they created. In this way, their control does not look like aggression, it looks like inevitability. In all of this, the genius of the narcissist lies in disguise. They rarely appear as tyrants. Instead, they weave control into the ordinary fabric of life. Every routine, every habit, every small preference is bent toward the same end, securing dominance without appearing to demand it. That is why people around them often fail to recognize the manipulation until much later, when exhaustion sets in and patterns become undeniable. The control was never announced, it was hidden in the ordinary, wrapped in the illusion of daily life. For a narcissist, a conversation is never simply an exchange of thoughts or a chance to connect with another human being. It becomes an arena, a stage, and a battleground all at once. Words for them are not carriers of truth but weapons and ornaments, used to establish superiority and secure validation. Most people enter a dialogue to share, to understand, or to learn something new. A narcissist enters with one goal in mind: to win. The structure of their communication reveals that what they seek is not intimacy, but dominance. When you speak with them, you may notice that your words rarely land as they should. If you share an accomplishment, they will immediately counter with something greater from their own life. If you describe a difficulty, they will remind you of how they endured something harder and triumphed. Even in moments where silence and listening would be appropriate, they will insert themselves, often in ways that make your experience feel small or insignificant compared to theirs. In their world, stories are not meant to be exchanged, they are meant to be measured, and yours are always expected to come up short. This competitive spirit extends to subtle details as well. If you use a certain phrase or reveal a new idea, they may appropriate it and present it later as their own insight. If you express vulnerability, they may file it away, only to bring it back as a weapon in a future argument. Every interaction becomes a ledger in their mind, where they tally points of superiority and record ways in which they gained the upper hand. They are not interested in building mutual understanding, because equality in conversation threatens their sense of dominance. The moment they feel like they are on level ground, they instinctively seek ways to rise above. The narcissist's listening, therefore, is not genuine. They listen with the intent to pounce, to redirect, to turn the flow of dialogue toward themselves. Their responses are crafted to shine a light back onto their achievements, their suffering, their knowledge, or their uniqueness. Even compliments they offer are often designed to circle back to themselves, as if praising you is only another method of highlighting their own generosity. It is not uncommon to walk away from such exchanges feeling unheard, unseen, and oddly depleted, because the conversation was not a bridge, it was a theft. In professional settings, this pattern becomes particularly evident. In meetings or group discussions, they will subtly undermine others' ideas while inflating their own. They frame suggestions as though they originated solely from their brilliance, dismissing the contributions of colleagues. The game is always to appear indispensable, always to prove they are the most knowledgeable voice in the room. Collaboration, which thrives on the free exchange of thoughts, dies in their presence, because the soil of competition they cultivate leaves no space for true connection to take root. Even in intimate relationships, where conversation should nurture trust and closeness, they maintain the same dynamic. When a partner shares feelings, the narcissist often reframes the discussion to highlight how misunderstood or unappreciated they are. The emotional energy that should bind two people becomes consumed by the narcissist's need to be the center. Over time, this corrodes intimacy, because the partner realizes that their inner world has no value unless it serves the narcissist's sense of superiority. The supposed dialogue becomes a monologue with two voices, one constantly overshadowing the other. The tragedy of this pattern is that it leaves no room for authenticity. True conversation requires vulnerability, humility, and openness, the willingness to be changed by what another person says. The narcissist resists all of these, because to them, change equals weakness and vulnerability equals risk. They cannot allow another's words to influence them deeply, for that would suggest the other person had something they lacked. To guard against this, they maintain control by making every exchange a contest where they must emerge as the stronger, smarter, or more admirable participant. What makes this habit so insidious is how easily it masquerades as confidence or charisma. At first, their dominance in conversation may seem like charm, their quick retorts like wit, and their endless stories like passion. But with time, the pattern reveals itself. No matter what the topic, it circles back to them. No matter what you share, it is somehow diminished, dismissed, or overshadowed. The person across from you is not truly present because they are too busy calculating how to remain on top. In this way, conversations with narcissists leave behind an emptiness. You may have spent hours in dialogue, but you leave with the sense that nothing was truly shared. The words that passed between you were like stones thrown in a river. They disturbed the surface, but never touched the depths. What could have been a moment of connection was instead turned into a contest, and like all contests, it ends with winners and losers. The narcissist ensures they are always the winner, even if it means the relationship itself loses. For the narcissist, image and admiration function like air and water. Without them, their carefully constructed identity cannot survive. While most people have some concern for how they are perceived, a narcissist turns this concern into a central obsession, a ritualized practice that occupies their thoughts and actions every single day. What they present to the world is not an honest reflection of who they are, but a polished, rehearsed performance designed to attract applause and shield their fragile self from exposure. To them, admiration is not optional, it is the currency that pays for their sense of existence. This obsession begins with appearance. They invest heavily in how they look, not necessarily because they enjoy fashion or grooming, but because they know image is the first hook to capture attention. They curate every detail: the clothes, the hairstyle, the posture, the tone of voice. What may look effortless is often calculated. Each choice is a statement meant to say, "I am special, I am superior, I deserve your admiration." Even when they present a casual or humble image, it is rarely spontaneous. The effortless look is carefully designed to produce a specific impression. Nothing is left to chance because every glance, every comment, every like on social media is a unit of currency that feeds their ego. Social interactions are treated the same way. Instead of approaching them as opportunities to connect, narcissists see them as stages where they must shine. They tell stories not to share but to impress. They exaggerate accomplishments, inflate their importance, and polish their failures into tales of hidden greatness. When they enter a room, their subtle calculations begin: who is paying attention, who is admiring, who is not noticing them. Those who admire are rewarded with charm, while those who do not are often dismissed or attacked. In their worldview, people are not individuals but mirrors, and the only question that matters is how brightly each mirror reflects back their image. Social media has become one of the most fertile grounds for this obsession. For many narcissists, it is the ultimate stage where likes, comments, and followers become a direct measure of worth. They construct feeds not as records of life, but as advertisements of their greatness. Every post, every picture, every caption is designed to elicit admiration. When the attention flows, they feel powerful and alive. When it slows, they feel agitated, restless, even angry, as though the world has denied them their due. The digital applause has become a substitute for genuine connection, and yet it never fully satisfies, which is why the cycle must continue endlessly. But this pursuit of image and admiration is not limited to appearances and stories. It extends into how they present their morality, their intelligence, even their suffering. A narcissist may play the role of the selfless helper, the wise teacher, or the misunderstood victim, whichever role secures the most validation at the moment. If admiration is gained by appearing strong, they will highlight their power. If admiration is gained by appearing vulnerable, they will showcase their wounds. It is not about authenticity but about control of perception. To them, the mask is more valuable than the face. What is striking is how deeply transactional this dynamic becomes. Every relationship is viewed through the lens of admiration. Friends, partners, colleagues, each is expected to provide a steady flow of praise and validation. If admiration dries up, the narcissist often withdraws, punishes, or discards the relationship entirely. They cannot tolerate being unseen, because to be unseen feels like non-existence. It is not enough to simply live. They must be admired while living, or the experience feels hollow. This dependence creates a paradox. The more admiration they receive, the more they crave it. Each compliment, each recognition is quickly absorbed and then forgotten, leaving a hunger for more. The ego, like a fire, is never satisfied with yesterday's fuel, and because the admiration is tied to a false image rather than true selfhood, it never brings peace. They remain trapped in a cycle of performance, applause, and emptiness, forever chasing the next fix. The cost of this obsession is authenticity. A narcissist rarely allows themselves to be vulnerable in any raw or genuine way, because the risk of rejection or criticism is unbearable. Instead, they polish and perform, hiding insecurity beneath layers of curated identity. To the outside world, they may appear radiant and confident, but behind the performance lies a fragile core, terrified of exposure. The image must be maintained at all costs, because it is the only shield against the shame and inadequacy they cannot face directly. In this way, admiration becomes both nourishment and prison. It feeds their ego but enslaves them to the endless task of maintaining an image. They may rise high in the eyes of others, but inside, they remain hollow, sustained only by reflections that never last. To understand this is to see why relationships with narcissists often feel shallow and draining. You are not relating to a person, you are relating to a performance, one that demands your applause but offers little truth in return. For a narcissist, criticism and manipulation are not occasional behaviors, they are daily pastimes, almost like quiet hobbies that they practice with precision. While others may engage in activities for relaxation or creativity, the narcissist turns human interaction itself into a playground for control. Their criticism is rarely direct enough to be recognized immediately as hostility. Instead, it is disguised as advice, concern, or guidance. Their manipulation is rarely overt enough to spark open conflict. It is wrapped in charm, logic, or even affection. This is what makes their methods so effective. They do not announce their intent, they weave it into the fabric of daily exchanges, leaving others questioning themselves instead of recognizing the control being exerted. Criticism, for them, is a tool of dominance. They deliver it under the mask of helping you improve, making it seem as though they have your best interest at heart. You may hear phrases like, "I'm just being honest," or "I only want what's best for you." But beneath these words is a calculated attempt to undermine your confidence. The effect is subtle but cumulative. One comment about your appearance, another about your decisions, a third about your abilities. Over time, the repetition eats away at your sense of self. You begin to hesitate, to doubt, to lean toward their approval for reassurance. That dependency is the real goal, because as long as you are questioning yourself, you remain easier to control. What makes this pattern particularly insidious is that the criticism is often sprinkled among occasional compliments. This creates confusion. You may receive praise one moment and cutting remarks the next, leaving you uncertain about where you truly stand. This inconsistency destabilizes your inner compass, making you more reliant on the narcissist's evaluation. They become the judge, the one who defines your worth, and you unconsciously adjust yourself to earn more praise and less criticism. In this way, what seems like an ordinary pattern of feedback is, in reality, a daily ritual of control. Manipulation works hand in hand with this. While criticism weakens your confidence, manipulation ensures your behavior serves their needs. They manipulate through guilt, by reminding you of what they have done for you, twisting generosity into debt. They manipulate through fear, threatening withdrawal of affection, approval, or support if you do not comply. They manipulate through flattery, exaggerating your strengths only when those strengths are being used in their service. Each method is subtle, difficult to pinpoint, because it is dressed in the familiar clothing of love, friendship, or partnership. Yet beneath it all, the motive is singular: to ensure the relationship revolves around their control. Even silence can be a form of manipulation. A narcissist may withdraw communication, ignore your presence, or give you the cold shoulder, creating an atmosphere of tension until you bend to their will. The quietness is not absence, it is strategy. They know that most people cannot tolerate being frozen out, and so they weaponize withdrawal as a way of keeping power without uttering a single word. What appears to be sulking or detachment is actually a well-practiced method of training you to anticipate their moods and adjust your behavior to avoid conflict. Over time, this combination of criticism and manipulation creates a subtle conditioning process. You may not realize it at first, but you start editing yourself, avoiding topics that might spark judgment, adjusting your choices to avoid their disapproval, even reshaping your personality to align with their preferences. What feels like compromise is often submission, and what feels like guidance is often indoctrination. The narcissist, without raising their voice or issuing direct commands, has managed to weave their control into your very sense of self. To them, this is not cruelty but necessity. They believe that if they are not controlling, they are vulnerable, and vulnerability feels intolerable. So they sharpen criticism into an art form and polish manipulation into a routine. The more subtle and hidden the tactic, the more effective it becomes, because it leaves no clear evidence of wrongdoing. You are left wondering if you are too sensitive, if you misunderstood, if perhaps the criticism was justified. In that fog of self-doubt, their control grows stronger. The tragedy is that what could have been moments of genuine connection are instead turned into competitions of power. Conversations that could build trust become platforms for critique. Acts of kindness that could nurture closeness become transactional debts. Silence that could mean rest becomes a weapon of pressure. Everything becomes twisted into a hobby of control, where the narcissist entertains themselves not by creating beauty or learning skills, but by bending people around them into submission. The long-term effect on those exposed to this hobby is profound. Self-esteem erodes, trust in one's own perception weakens, and the ability to engage in authentic relationships diminishes. Yet to the narcissist, this erosion is invisible. What they see is the smooth functioning of their carefully maintained world, where others move according to their design. For them, criticism and manipulation are not acts of malice, they are simply the daily rituals that sustain their sense of superiority. For a narcissist, drama is not an unfortunate accident or an unpleasant disruption. It is a source of stimulation, a kind of entertainment that keeps them at the center of attention. While most people seek peace in their relationships and stability in their environment, the narcissist often finds such calmness unbearable, even boring. To them, harmony means invisibility, and invisibility feels like death to the ego. So, consciously or unconsciously, they stir tension, ignite conflicts, and manufacture chaos, because it ensures that the spotlight never drifts away from them. The way they create drama is rarely blatant at first. It often begins with a small remark, a subtle provocation, or the introduction of a half-truth into a conversation. They might hint at something someone said behind another's back, or they may exaggerate a detail to trigger suspicion. What seems like a casual comment is often a carefully placed spark. Once the spark catches fire, they step back, allowing others to clash while they quietly watch the spectacle. To them, this is a form of amusement, a game where the emotions of others are the pieces they move across the board. Drama also serves another crucial function: it keeps people unbalanced. When individuals are caught in conflict, they are too busy defending themselves or sorting out confusion to notice the narcissist's deeper manipulations. By creating storms, the narcissist ensures that clarity is never achieved. Confusion is power, because when people cannot find steady ground, they are more likely to look to the narcissist for guidance or validation. In this way, drama becomes not only entertainment but also a shield that hides their true motives. In close relationships, this pattern can be particularly damaging. A partner may notice that every time things are going smoothly, some new problem suddenly appears. Perhaps it is an argument about something trivial, or a dramatic retelling of how others have wronged them, or even an accusation meant to provoke guilt. The cycle is predictable. Peace arrives, tension feels uncomfortable for the narcissist, so they inject drama to restore their sense of importance. Over time, the partner may begin to believe that instability is normal, that conflict is inevitable, and in doing so, they surrender their own desire for peace. This surrender ensures the narcissist's continued control. In friendships or social circles, narcissists often play the role of instigators. They pit people against one another, spreading selective information to provoke jealousy, rivalry, or mistrust. They thrive in the role of the hidden director, orchestrating interactions so that others clash while they stand back as the apparent neutral party. Later, they may even present themselves as the peacemaker, the wise one who resolves the very conflict they created. To the unsuspecting, it looks as though they are helpful and centered. To the perceptive, it becomes clear that the drama itself was staged for their benefit. Drama also feeds their need for significance. When emotions run high, attention gravitates toward the center of the storm. The narcissist often positions themselves in that center, either as the victim, the hero, or the misunderstood genius. These roles guarantee admiration or sympathy, both of which serve as fuel for their fragile ego. In contrast, a calm environment offers no such stage. Without drama, they risk being just another person in the crowd, and that possibility is intolerable. Another layer of this obsession with drama lies in their ability to rewrite narratives. After igniting conflict, they retell events in ways that paint themselves as the wronged or the righteous. They frame others as aggressors, exaggerate their own suffering, and highlight how resilient or forgiving they have been. This retelling ensures that even after the storm has passed, they continue to reap admiration and loyalty. It also prevents others from piecing together the truth, since the narcissist's version of events becomes the dominant one. What makes this habit particularly destructive is the way it drains the emotional energy of those around them. People caught in cycles of drama experience constant stress, uncertainty, and fatigue. Yet to the narcissist, this exhaustion in others is useful. Weakened people are easier to control, more hesitant to resist, and more dependent on the narcissist's approval. The narcissist's enjoyment of drama, therefore, is not just entertainment, it is also a subtle strategy of domination. The irony is that while they thrive on drama, they often accuse others of being the source of it. They project their own behavior outward, labeling others as too sensitive, too reactive, or always starting problems. This projection not only protects their self-image but also further destabilizes those around them. People begin to doubt their own perceptions, wondering if they are indeed the cause of the turbulence. Meanwhile, the narcissist continues to feed on the chaos with impunity. In the end, drama for the narcissist is more than mere diversion. It is the air they breathe, the stage on which they perform, and the tool by which they maintain control. While others yearn for resolution and rest, the narcissist crafts storms to keep life endlessly turbulent. Peace, for them, is not a blessing but a threat, because in peace their importance fades. This is why those who remain close to a narcissist often feel trapped in cycles of conflict that never seem to end. The drama is not accidental. It is the chosen fuel for the narcissist's sense of existence. When most people give kindness, they do so freely. It is a gesture that arises from empathy, from connection, from the natural desire to support another person without expecting something in return. For a narcissist, however, kindness is never simple. It is not an act of generosity but an investment, a calculated transaction designed to secure leverage in the future. What looks like a favor, a gift, or a helpful gesture is rarely offered without strings attached. Instead, each act of apparent generosity becomes a coin they store in a private ledger, to be spent later when they need obedience, loyalty, or validation. This makes their kindness feel strangely heavy. At first, it may come across as overwhelming generosity. They may shower you with attention, offer assistance before you even ask, or present thoughtful gifts that make you feel special. In those early stages, you are likely to interpret this as genuine care. The warmth of their attention feels flattering, even intoxicating. But over time, the pattern emerges: what they gave was not free. It was a subtle contract you never agreed to, but are still expected to fulfill. When you fail to repay it in the way they imagine, the tone shifts. They remind you of their past kindness, either directly with words or indirectly through guilt-inducing silence. Suddenly, their earlier generosity is revealed as a tool for manipulation. This dynamic is especially evident in close relationships. A narcissistic partner might take on a responsibility, like paying for something or handling a task, but later use it as a weapon in arguments. They may say, "After all I've done for you, this is how you treat me." The act itself is not remembered as a gift, but as a debt you owe. Instead of building intimacy, their kindness becomes a burden, a constant reminder that you are not free but indebted. What could have been an expression of love transforms into an invisible chain that keeps you tied to their expectations. Even small gestures are subject to this transactional logic. If they listen to your problems, they expect you to listen to theirs at greater length. If they drive you somewhere, they expect loyalty when they need public support. If they defend you once, they expect lifelong gratitude and compliance. Nothing is ever left to rest as a simple kindness. The narcissist's mind calculates exchanges relentlessly, turning every moment of giving into an opportunity for control. To them, relationships are not built on mutual respect or care, but on a constant balancing of accounts, where they must always remain in the position of creditor and you the debtor. This approach to kindness also serves their image. By displaying generosity publicly, they secure admiration from others, appearing selfless or noble. Yet behind closed doors, the same acts are twisted into demands. They will retell stories of how much they have sacrificed, exaggerating their contributions to highlight their superiority. The admiration of outsiders, combined with the guilt of those close to them, ensures that their kindness multiplies its benefits. It strengthens their reputation while tightening their grip on personal relationships. The emotional effect on the recipient is profound. Over time, you begin to mistrust their kindness, sensing the unspoken contract behind every gesture. You may feel guilty for receiving, even when you did nothing wrong. You may hesitate to ask for help, knowing it will later be used against you. This erodes the natural flow of giving and receiving in relationships, replacing it with a rigid economy of control. Instead of feeling supported, you feel trapped in an endless cycle of repayment that is never enough. For the narcissist, however, this cycle feels entirely justified. In their mind, their contributions prove their superiority, and therefore they deserve endless gratitude and compliance in return. They are blind to the way their generosity suffocates, because to them, kindness is not about lifting others, but about elevating themselves. It is less about who you are and more about how much you can reinforce their sense of importance. The tragedy of this pattern is that it corrupts something fundamentally human. Genuine kindness builds trust, strengthens bonds, and allows relationships to flourish. When it becomes transactional, it breeds suspicion, guilt, and dependency. The narcissist does not see this corruption because for them, relationships are not about equality but about leverage. As long as they hold the upper hand, they believe they are winning. But in truth, what they create is not love or loyalty but quiet resentment and exhaustion in those who remain close. This is why many people who live with or work alongside narcissists describe feeling drained, not because the narcissist never gives, but because their giving is poisoned by hidden demands. It is never about what you truly need. It is about what they can later claim as proof of their superiority. In this way, kindness becomes not an offering but a trap, one that locks others into cycles of guilt and obligation while feeding the narcissist's endless hunger for validation and control.